And I ran looking for a phone along the top above the grassy knoll and came to the Texas School Book Depository, ran up the steps. A young man in shirt sleeves came out. I said, "Where's their phone?" He said, "You better ask inside." I did, of another guy standing inside, pointed to an office. I found a phone. I got onto NBC in about 10 seconds.
Time instinct was, I got to get to a phone. You know, I need to call the station and tell them that this has happened. So I went up to the front door of the depository building right there, and I asked the guy coming out, I said, "Where's the phone?" And he jerked his thumb and said, "In there." I said, "Thank you." 2 weeks later, Secret Service called and wanted to do an interview. I said, "Fine." And they said, "Are you familiar with the testimony of Lee Harvey Oswald following his arrest?" I said, "No." I said, "Well, he states as he was leaving the building, a young man with a crew cut rushed up, identified himself as a newsman, and asked for a phone with us." And he said, based on what you said and based on what he said, this was obviously you asking the assassin where a phone was.
Oh my gosh, so you...
On the local television, that a guy who worked at the book depository had been arrested for shooting a policeman. And I thought, book depository, God, isn't that weird? He could have been coming out when I'm going in. 18 months later, I'm in New York for NBC, and William Manchester, who's finishing his book, The Death of the President, calls and said he's been over the ground minutely. He'd timed my call, first call to NBC, at 4 minutes after the shots being fired, tied, incidentally, with the wire service bulletins. And he was convinced that it was Oswald. I'd asked for a phone, and could I remember? And I said I couldn't. I wasn't focused on his face at all. Even though I saw him later that evening in the police station when they brought him back and forth, I didn't remember the face. So Manchester said he was 95% sure, because that night, he said, Oswald was interviewed by the Secret Service, which I hadn't known. And as he left the building, he said a young, blonde, crew-cut Secret Serviceman ran up the steps and asked him for a phone. Well, apparently, no Secret Serviceman did. I was young, blonde, White House press badge, gray suit. And so he mistook, Manchester says unequivocally that Oswald mistook me for a Secret Serviceman. And as we were talking, a little boy came up and pointed, "Mister, I seen a man with a gun right up in the window there." And another person came up and said, "Yes, I seen a man with a gun up there."
Whatever. And then just as they turned, boom, there was this real loud, reverberating explosion. And I remember thinking, I turned to the guy with me, I said, "You know, if that's a firecracker exploitation, then boom, again." And I glanced up, and I thought I saw a rifle barrel, but at that stage I really could not be sure.